enters into the water body directly. Next is radioactive pollution. So radioactive pollution is the physical pollution of the environment and its inhabitants as a result of nuclear explosions and accidents at nuclear power plants. Radionuclides that emit beta particles and gamma rays are the main sources of radioactive pollution. For example, the atom bomb dropped at Hiroshima and the nuclear leakage at Chernobyl are well-known instances of such radioactive pollution. So the main source of radioactive pollution are beta particles and gamma rays. The major kind of pollution that we are experiencing from the last few decades and has become a great issue for human health and soils balance and environment's fitness is actually plastic pollution. So plastic pollution is actually the accumulation of large amount of plastic materials in the earth. So plastic pollution results in the accumulation of plastic materials at a large scale. It upsets the marine ecosystem, particularly when it reaches the ocean. For instance, the result of plastic pollution has caused the formation of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is actually an island of plastic rubbles, plastic waste materials that is 3 times the size of France, the country France. Such huge amounts of plastic waste dumping into the oceans have resulted in the creation of a plastic garbage island. According to the author, the latter half of the last century actually has seen an increasing awareness of the hazards posed by rising pollution levels. So people are being more and more aware about environmental pollution and what kinds of human activities are actually escalating the rate of pollution and harming the environment's balance, the ecosystem's balance. The efforts of important scientists, environmentalists and research practitioners have helped in the growth of such an awareness about pollution. For instance, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, which was published in 1962, it focused on the irreparable damage caused to the environment by the indiscreet use of insecticides like DDT. This was actually an important step in this direction. So concerns about environmental pollution was the driving force behind the environmental movements during the last century. For instance, we have a very common example like the movie How Old Are You?, which also talks about gender differences and so on, women's capability, who decides women's the expiry date of women's dreams and so on. It talks about gender at one point, but it also points to the fact that how the use of pesticides, insecticides, and many harmful toxins on vegetables in the process of agricultural practices are resulting in hazardous diseases, the escalation of cancer patients in not just in Kerala but all over India. So that is another example. Thus, the increasing awareness actually has forced governments all over the world to implement policies and enact laws to prevent and manage pollution, particularly caused by human behavior or human intervention and exploitation of nature. So let us see what are the aims of pollution control. So pollution control basically aims at reducing the release of contaminants into air, water, and land. The principle of 3 R's, that is reduce, reuse, and recycle, goes a long way in preventing environmental pollution. So we have to reduce the use of plastic and other materials that cause the disruption of the ecosystem's balance by throwing away, like our culture of use and throw. We have to reduce that. We have to reuse materials rather than just discard them into the nature, and we have to recycle plastic products as much as possible. So just throwing them away into the soil will cause us and cost us much more than we can imagine ever. Then the aim of pollution control, another aim of pollution control is, it is highly imperative that we all assume the responsibility for the degrading quality of our living conditions and act wisely to prevent further damage and degradation. So we have to assume or take responsibility for our actions. We have to take responsibility for our actions. We have to act wisely, and we have to do whatever that is possible to prevent further damage and degradation of the environment that is a part and parcel of our life, like Chief Seattle in his speech reminds us. So we must recognize that our personal choices, our actions can either worsen or improve the quality of our environment. So whatever we do, we have to think twice or thrice and see and make sure that whatever we do doesn't result in the destruction of ecosystem's balance, because without ecosystem, without nature, without earth, human beings' sustenance on earth is quite impossible. So thank you.